So let's just take a deep breath.
Yes.
Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Inhale slowly and very, very deeply. Center yourself. Just relax your shoulder, release all the stress and tension that you are subconsciously, unconsciously carrying around. Inhale. And as you exhale, release all that pent up stress. Inhale once more. Be aware of your head, your face. Be aware of the stress and tension you're carrying around in your face. Exhale and let go. Now be aware of your jaws, especially the tension in your jaws. Sometimes it's very tight. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale and release all the stress and tension now. Inhale. I am that I am. I am not the body. The body is simply a vehicle of the soul. Exhale. Visualize your body fading away. With it fades away all the stress, all the tension, any pains, any kind of disease, any kind of trauma that you're carrying around in your physical body vanishes. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. Inhale. And as you inhale, as you hold your breath, be aware of all the clouds of emotions and thoughts that surround you. And as you exhale, let them all go. Release. Inhale once more, slowly and deeply. I am not the mind. The carpenter is not the furniture. The computer user is not the computer. I am not the mind. Exhale and let go. All your pain, physical, psychological, emotional, mental, completely vanishes away. I am the soul. I am that I am. Inhale. And as you inhale, visualize yourself as pure light spreading in all directions. I am that I am. I am a being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. I am connected to my higher soul. I am one with my higher soul. I am that I am. Continue to breathe slowly and rhythmically. Inhale and exhale. Inhale slowly, inhale deeply. I am a child of God. I am connected with God. I am one with God. I am one with all. And as you exhale, just be aware of the stillness. Be aware of the sensation of weightlessness. Continue to breathe slowly and very deeply in a slow rhythm. Just be aware of the light. Be aware of the colors that you may see. Be aware of the shapes or patterns that might become visible to you. Simply keep breathing slowly and deeply and expand your consciousness to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chakuk Sri, to Lord Mahaguruji Meiling, to all the great, great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to the angels of theosophy, to the angels of connectivity. We humbly invoke for your blessings of divine light, divine love, and divine power, divine healing, inner healing, physical healing, divine help, divine guidance, divine protection. We specifically invoke for your guidance in understanding the subject of clairvoyance, the technical aspects, the theoretical aspects, the practical aspects, that we may apply this knowledge and education to become a better person, to become a better soul, to become a better instrument for healing, for serving, for helping Mother Earth and all those we share Mother Earth with. We invoke for your help, your guidance, and your protection, and we thank you. We thank you deeply, with lots of love, with all our love. We thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath. Be aware of the light. Be aware of the light within you. Be aware that you are the light yourself. Exhale and visualize yourself returning to your body. Exhale. Inhale slowly and deeply. And as you exhale this time, move your fingers. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, move your toes. Move the toes of your feet. Inhale once more. And with this third exhalation, open your eyes with a big smile. Atma Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in for session 2 on clairvoyance. We shall be starting with a little bit of a recap of the main points of what clairvoyance is and what the various types of clairvoyance are. Today, we will be talking about clairvoyance in space and time. What clairvoyance is, as we covered in the last session, simple clairvoyance is a simple opening of the sight, enabling whoever is the possessor of clairvoyance to see astral and etheric entities which happen to be present around him. This power does not extend to seeing things which are very far away or in the past, in the present, or in the future. So the basicest, simplest form of clairvoyance is to see energy, etheric energy or astral energy, which are present immediately around us. Clairvoyance in space, which is a little more advanced, is the capacity to see scenes or events removed from the seer in space and either too far distant for ordinary observation or concealed by intermediate objects. Another term for this is remote seeing or remote vision. It's basically, have you heard of the Mahabharata, one of the ancient Indian epics? So in the Mahabharata, there was a character, the king, Dhritarashtra. He was physically blind. He was born physically blind, but he had a very trusted advisor. And this advisor was relaying scenes to him from the battlefield. So according to the legends, according to the myths in the stories, there was a battle between the two families, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And the two families were at war, and there were hundreds and thousands of lives lost and so much damage. The king himself, Dhritarashtra, he could not physically participate in the war, but his sons were battling. His sons were battling with his brother's sons. And this advisor, I think his name was Sanjaya, he could see what was happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra far, far away. And he was relaying the events to the king. So that is an example of clairvoyance in space, in which you are not limited, or the observer is not limited by the physical object or anything in between. The next part that we come to is clairvoyance in time. That's the capacity to see objects or events which are far away, removed in time. In other words, the ability to look into the past or the future is the stuff that movies are made up of, time travel. So according to clairvoyance, the theories of clairvoyance, time travel is possible, except that you physically do not go back in time, but your clairvoyant sight does. Now, here is a tenet about time travel or clairvoyance, which is to do with science physically today. You see, space and time are interrelated, and understanding this concept will give us a great idea on how we can apply clairvoyance practically. So this Earth is in the solar system. The solar system is in the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy is orbiting some other central galactic star. Now, all of these are constantly rotating, constantly moving. So the position that we are in right now, at this point in time, is hundreds of thousands of kilometers away 24 hours ago. So if you were to go back in time, but without altering your space, you would be looking at an event in outer space. Does this make sense? Space without time is meaningless. Time without space is meaningless. For example, if you want to go and meet your friend for coffee, you say, hey, let's meet up for coffee. And your friend says, okay, sure. When? So you know that he has to go to a coffee shop. He or she has to go to a coffee shop. You know the space, but you need to know when, the time. So the space and time go hand in hand. Or if you tell your friend, let's meet at 8 p.m. And your friend says, sure. Where? So at 8 p.m., you could be standing somewhere. Your friend could be standing somewhere else. If you do not coordinate the location in space, the meeting is meaningless. So space and time go hand in hand. So time travel is only possible if it's accompanied by space travel. So space time go together. Space time without one another, space without time, time without space doesn't work, meaningless. So the clairvoyance of space and time together will help an observer, will help the subject to go to a certain location at a certain point in time. If they only go to a point in time, then the location they could just be looking at vast, empty, cold, dead space. So that's the basics of clairvoyance. Understanding this fundamental correlation between space and time is critical to operating clairvoyance. So that was the fundamental parts of what we discussed in last week, a little bit add on this time. Today we're moving on to chapters 2 and 3, which is talking about simple clairvoyance. We'll be talking about full clairvoyance first and then partial clairvoyance. Now it's important to know about full clairvoyance first because it tells you all the things which full clairvoyance offers. And then we go into partial clairvoyance because most of us, almost all of us, have certain degrees of clairvoyance partially developed. Some people have it more, some people have it less. So first starting with simple clairvoyance, full. Now we know that there are various planes. We have the physical plane, we have the etheric plane, we have the astral plane, the mental plane, and the higher plane, so on and so forth. So the vision that you get on the astral plane is called astral sight. And astral sight has greater extension than physical sight. It can see more into the past and the future, and the viewers of it are casually visible to clairvoyants, even those who don't know to specifically look for them. What this means is that when astral clairvoyance is developed, you can see objects, you can see things happening in the astral plane, even without necessarily wanting to see it. It's just there. Why? Because the energy is just that much more. Nevertheless, there's a very real difference between occasional incidental glimpses and the definitive power of projection of astral sight in space or time. So there's a difference between casually just happening to see things vis-a-vis purposefully activating clairvoyance and looking at it. So a very important fact, which is important to note, is that when astral clairvoyance is developed, color, the perception of color becomes really, really, really strong. So the clairvoyant person would find himself able to see entirely new colors, several new colors, which would not resemble any of those colors which are included in the spectrum as we presently know it. So therefore, it is indescribable with any terms we have in our command right now. So it's like this, you know the Vibgyor, right? Violet to red and all the colors in between. And then you can have some really fanciful colors in between, like, I don't know, periwinkle and chartreuse or teal or magenta. I don't know, I understand it's purple or pink. So you tell me that it's magenta, I'm like, okay, it's deeper purple or stuff like that. So imagine you having to describe a color which you have never seen, which is not seeable. Can you describe a color, a physical color, which does not exist? Or a more bigger challenge, can you describe the color red to a person who is completely blind since birth? Describe the color red or describe the color blue. So you can say, okay, the color feels very hot or the color feels very cold. This is the color that your skin becomes when you are in the sun for 48 hours. So it becomes kind of difficult to describe the colors you see in the astral and the higher worlds because those kinds of colors simply do not exist in the physical world, and therefore we have no physical terms to describe such colors. So this kind of clairvoyance it happens not just during your day-to-day activities, it happens during specific times. We'll talk about when this happens. Sometimes meditation, oftentimes not meditation. So we'll come to that. So not only would this clairvoyant person in the astral world, not only will he be able to see various colors, different unique colors, he would be able to see new objects which were composed of these new colors. And he would also discover there are lots of modifications which have been introduced into the colors of many, many objects. And these can be familiar objects or they can be new objects. And they will often be intermingling with their astral colors, with their physical colors, with various colors. Long story short, in the astral world, the colors are wild. They are crazy. So now, in ordinary sight, any surfaces of color which appear to be perfect would offer very distinct, very different from physical sight. So I've tried to represent this with a screenshot. This actually is an image from the WandaVision series, which is showing on Disney Plus. And there's a character called Spectrum. Okay, Captain Monica Rambeau, Spectrum, and she goes to these various planes of existence, and she comes into this new world of reality, and her eyes have been mutated, they've been altered, so she can see the electromagnetic spectrum. So what you see over here, you've got these power lines and the power poles. She can see the radio waves passing through. She can see the way the transformers are emitting the radio fields and the frequencies. You can see all these greenish and purple and other hues which are moving about. So you can think of this like you're sitting in your home, you've got your mobile phone, you've got your hand phone, and that has a certain radiatory field around it. So it is attracting the energies of the 2G, 3G, 4G, OMG, whatever other kinds of electromagnetic spectrum there are. Then there's Wi-Fi, which you have in your home, and that has a certain color. Then you got a microwave, and that is a certain color. You've got your computer, you've got lights, you've got other wiring in your house, each of which is giving out a different kind of color. So imagine that you're clairvoyant, you will be able, when you have that power developed, to see the various objects with electricity running through them, with energy running through them. Each of them would have a different kind of color. So here's an exercise which you might want to do later on, not a part of today's discussion, but something which I found as an interesting practice in theory is that you can sit down, you can fix your attention on a particular object. Okay, could be your mobile phone, or in most cases, I would recommend having a small, say, a laughing Buddha or a photograph that you like, something that evokes a positive psychological response. So you can look at that object, look at it for some time, inhale, exhale, get into a very meditative state, a really calm state without any kind of distractions, and then defocus your eyes. So you're looking at that object, but instead of really looking at the object, your eyes are kind of like defocused. You're looking at it and you're trying to see the energy of the object. So if you've done basic pranic healing, remember when you saw your aura, the fingers and the sights in between, something like that, the focus, defocus kind of style. And maybe you will start to see certain shapes, certain colors which are coming up. So you're not hallucinating, you're just practicing. So we can't obviously do this exercise now, but this is something which you can try to practice by yourself. So it must always be remembered that in most cases, a corresponding change in shape and color would at the same time be brought about in his other senses also, so that the person will be capable of hearing and perhaps even of feeling more than those around him. Now, supposing the addition to this, you obtain the sight of the astral plane, what further changes can be observable? The easiest way to understand the difference is to take an example. If you look at a man with both the sights meaning physical sight, etheric sight, astral sight, you would see the buttons in the back of his coat in both cases. Only if you use the etheric sight, you would see through them, and you would see the shank side, the front side nearest to you. But if you looked astrally, you would see it not like that, but as if you were standing behind the man as well. So clairvoyance, according to this, basically tries to say that when clairvoyant sight is activated, the other senses also get activated. So we have five main senses, five traditional main senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. There are additional senses such as a sense of temperature, a sense of balance, a sense of pressure, a sense of height. Okay, you have all these various other senses. Another sense is perhaps you might know that you sense someone is looking at you. You're in a crowd, but you get this feeling in the back of your neck, a spider sense that people are staring at you, that kind of thing. So with the development of clairvoyance in the sights, some of the other senses also get tuned up. And when you're using clairvoyance to look at an object, using astral clairvoyance, you are seeing multiple sides of the object simultaneously. So it's like they've given the example of a button. Here I'm using a cap. So you can see the front and you see the back at the same time. So the front, sides, and back, they become observable simultaneously. So I've tried to kind of represent this. This is a very famous painting by a very famous painter, Pablo Picasso. So here you kind of see this horse. I think it's a horse. I'm not personally very fond of this style of painting. Designers and other artists may disagree, but not my personal preference. But nevertheless, you can see the way this horse looks. You can see inside the mouth and outside the mouth, up inside the nose, outside the nose. You can see the horse in perspective, which is you can see from the side in profile. You can also see the horse straight in front. And then you can potentially see the cells inside the horse. You can see what's inside and outside. There is this duck, which also you can see from the top and the sides. Then there's this cow, the tortoise, the bull, where you can see. So if you just look at one part of it, you're seeing the back. So this is the back of the head, but this is the side of the head. This is the front of the head. So imagine you're seeing the front, side, and back simultaneously. Now, obviously, the first time you see something clairvoyantly like this, it's going to be extremely confusing. Naturally, because you're seeing everything simultaneously. So clairvoyance is a matter of practice. That you see a simple object, a very simple object, and you try to understand and visualize what that object would look like from the front, from the side, from the back, and even inside. And then all of it is laid out to you in one plane. You can see all of the sides all together. That is what is meant by astral sight or astral clairvoyance. So it's not so simple as, oh, you see love or you see the thought forms and all floating about. You see everything happening simultaneously, all together, all at once. So that's why full clairvoyance, complete clairvoyance needs a great amount of training, a great amount of practice. So here, if you were looking etherically at a wooden cube while with writing on all of its sides, it would be as if the cube were made of glass. So you could see through the cube, you would see the writing on the opposite side backwards, while on the right and left sides would not be clear to you unless you move because you're seeing it edgewise. Okay? But if you looked at it, now this is etheric vision. This is etheric vision where you're seeing all the objects, but you can see through it. Etheric means you can see through it, becomes transparent. Etheric vision, simply put, transparent. But if you looked at it astrally, you would see all the sides at once. You'd see the right way up as if the whole cube had been flattened out before you. And you'd be able to see every particle of the inside as well. Not through the others, but flattened out. So, difference between etheric clairvoyance, etheric basically makes things transparent. Etheric clairvoyance makes things transparent. You can see through it. Astral clairvoyance makes you flatten everything out. So you see the front, the sides, the back, inside, outside, everything simultaneously. You would be looking at it from another direction at right angles to all the directions that we know. Okay. Now I tried searching for photographs which perhaps or paintings which depict this, didn't come very close, but I'll try and show you some examples. So here's another detailed example. If you look at the back of a watch etherically, you see all the wheels through it. You see the face through them, but backwards. But if you look at it astrally, you see the face the right way up and all the wheels lying separately, but nothing on top of anything else. So this picture over here, okay, can you see this picture? This is an example of clairvoyantly looking at a watch with etheric vision. Okay, so you've got the hands of the watch, you've got the dial and the face of the watch, and you've got these various wheels and cogs and screws and nuts and everything else. So it's transparent. It's as if you were seeing the watch completely transparent. And on this next slide is kind of like a depiction of what astral clairvoyance is like, sort of, because everything is all exploded out. So the watch has been exploded out. You're seeing every surface, every side simultaneously. Again, there are not enough images which can depict what this looks like, but you sort of begin to get an idea, yeah? Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the previous slide over here, and I'd like for you to kind of pay attention to these 2 points. If you look at a watch etherically, you see everything through it and the face, but backwards. But if you look at it astrally, you see the face the right way up and everything lying separately, nothing on top of everything else. So in astral clairvoyance, all the objects get exploded out. Everything is right there in front of you. So if you look at a person, if you look at a human being, etherically, with etheric clairvoyance, you can see through possibly their skin, you can see through their organs, you can maybe see if there's some sort of a cancer or a growth or the internal organs, you can see how much blood flow, all of these things. The person becomes transparent. But if you use your astral clairvoyance, then you not only see all of this, but you start seeing everything exploded out. You see the skeleton system, the nervous system, the muscle system, the cardiovascular system. You start to see the thought forms. You start to see the shape of the aura. Everything becomes completely clear to you. Now, of course, you must take a lot of time and practice to understand it, because as you can imagine, you see a person with face and, a face, but imagine seeing a person all completely exploded out in all kinds of colors. You see their brains first, and you're saying, I love you for your brains, not just your physical appearance, and you get to actually see the brain. That's going to be very, very confusing for people who are finding love in the astral plane. Okay, so just, full clairvoyance is freaky. Yeah, you'd freak out. So be careful what you wish for. So anyway, that's the example that they've given of a clock. All right. Any questions so far on this? No? All right. Then let's go with another example. And the example given here is a person who has full clairvoyance would no longer have any difficulty in reading any page in even a closed book, because now he's looking at it through all the pages before it, behind it. He's looking straight down as if it's the only page to be seen. So this style of painting is called, I think, cubism. Okay, where this is supposed to be one entire book, by the way. It's not multiple books. No one has gone and made any damage in a library. This is one single book, apparently, where all the pages are being viewed simultaneously. Everything can be seen all together. So imagine if you're reading a book and you see the top of the book and the back of the book and all the pages in between, front and back, all the pictures, all the pigments, everything all together. So that's what full clairvoyance is like. Okay, would you cover this? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Like how to read a book clairvoyantly? Yeah, the knowledge gets mixed up. The knowledge gets completely mixed up because you need to kind of really sit down and practice. Can you imagine the amount of patience and training that is needed in order to be able to read a book clairvoyantly? Now, it's very fanciful to say, okay, I can now read page 25 of any book which is closed. So that page just opens up in front of you and you can see the whole thing. That's the ideal notion. But in practicality, in practical clairvoyance, what happens is you see pages 1 to 24 and you see pages 25 to, I don't know, 100 all at the same time. And then you've got to really focus to look at page 25. And then not only do you see the words and the letters and the paragraphs, you see the paper as well. You see the fabric of the paper. You see the fibers of the paper. You see the colors and pigments that are there on that book or that magazine. Everything becomes completely visible. So it's like reading a book, page 1 to 100, all at the same time. Very good for theory, but not so good when you're trying to read a suspense novel. Okay, so everything visible all at the same time. And this is still we're dealing with simple clairvoyance, full. Technical points, the thickness of a wall. So if you've got a wall, the thickness of a wall, or the number of walls which are between the observer and the object will make a great deal of difference to the clarity of the etheric sight. Because etheric sight is what? It just makes things transparent. You're using your etheric body, you're using the etheric plane. The etheric vision just makes it transparent. So if you've got like a very thick wall between, say, a box, you've got a box here and then you've got the observer here and you've got a thick wall in between, that kind of vision is going to be blurry. Or if it's in 5 rooms away. So you're observing from here, but the object is like 5 rooms away. The etheric vision would still be very, very difficult because it has to penetrate through all of the books, all of the walls, all of the thickness of the walls in a linear fashion. But astrally, if you're using astral clairvoyance, it makes no difference. It makes no difference whatsoever because on the astral plane, everything is all at once. So think of it like this. Etheric vision is there's an object in front of you and you can see behind it. Simple enough. Think of astral vision as looking at a map. So imagine a map of the world. In etheric vision, you want to go from here to, say, the Petronas Towers. So, you got to go straight, then you got to go left, you got to go forward for some time, go right, like driving a car or walking. But in a map on Google Earth, you've got the satellite view opened up, what you can see is you can just go straight up and it says, that's Petronas, and you zoom straight in. So astrally, everything is laid out flat in front of you. It's completely clear. So that's what clairvoyance means, clear vision. clear visual. So it makes it completely clear and visible to you because there is nothing interfering in between. So if you can tune yourself, if you can practice and tune in, that's why they use the phrase tune in. You can tune in not just to the general area of where the towers are, but you can tune in from what's on the top floor to what's on the 50th floor to what's on the basement to what's inside someone's lunchbox or inside someone's food. All of that becomes very, very clear with astral because on the astral plane, the matter is much more refined and it's much easier. All right, point of practice. How do we learn to develop our our astral clairvoyance? So while we were studying the astral plane, which was several books ago, there was one particular technique which I personally found really useful, and I try to use it till date, which is before going to bed, we invoke, we ask the Supreme God, we ask our spiritual teacher, we ask our higher soul and guardian angels for help, guidance, and protection, that in the inner world, we may be able to be of service, or we may be able to go to the inner schools and learn from the spiritual teacher. So if you remember in the first session on clairvoyance, this was something that we discussed. It was a point of chat, that if you practice this for some amount of time, your awareness in the inner world starts to grow up. Your awareness, instead of being limited to what you can simply see, starts to expand and become much broader. And as it becomes broader, as it becomes more and more practiced, you will be able to increase your radius of clairvoyance. So simple clairvoyance is limited to what you have immediately around you. You cannot see at a distance. But clairvoyance in space and clairvoyance in time is connected to the astral plane. So as you develop your astral sight, you will be able to practice more and more. So the simplest way to do it when you're asleep, or do it before you're going to sleep. You invoke for help, you invoke for guidance, you invoke for protection. Very, very important. You must always invoke for divine help, divine guidance, and divine protection. And then you proceed with wanting to learn in the inner world, wanting to serve and help other people in the inner world. As you do this more and more with intention, intention is super important. As you do this with the intention to serve, with the intention to learn, the astral clairvoyance starts to develop more and more. Okay. Now, of course, this sounds paradoxical and impossible, and it's very inexplicable to a mind which is not very specifically trained to grasp the idea. Yet, this is the basic truth. So the astral, so the etheric is more or less 2D. The astral is more or less 3D. Well, technically speaking, it is 4D because we're talking about length, width, and height, and also time. Because clairvoyance is space and time, so space-time together. So the moment you say clairvoyance, you automatically go into what is called fourth dimension. And I'm sure a lot of you may have come across this on the internet, or you might have heard other people talk about it on TV or radio or wherever. Fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, 99th dimension, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so for us, we are we exist in a three-dimensional space: length, width, and height. And time is the fourth dimension. In astral clairvoyance, time also becomes something that we can move forward and backward with. Now think about it in this way. We are time traveling into the future 1 second at a time. I want to say that again. We are capable of time travel into the future 1 second at a time. Can we go forward 10 seconds right now? No, not really. Can we go back into the past? No, not really. But in our mind, many of us still live in the past. In our mind, many of us are always thinking about the future. Very few of us actually live in the present moment all the time. And that is the whole purpose of meditation, achieving oneness with the higher soul, is to be present, is to have mindfulness, is to be aware. So that's the fun part. So with clairvoyance, with more practice clairvoyance, as you develop your inner vision, your astral vision more and more with practice, with intention, you will be able to move through time also forward and backward. You will not be limited to one simple direction, right? So that's the whole thing about simple clairvoyance. Now, here's an example, the best that was available, of, say, an object. So this whole thing, you see these 9 boxes, they're basically representing one box, one room. So here's one room, and you're seeing this room from the top. So here it's the top of the room, and that's something way at the bottom. Depending on the perspective, you can see it from the top side, the bottom side, the right or the left, or the corners, the four corners, and the central. So you're seeing all the possible ways to walk into a room, to see a room aesthetically. So the left side, it's kind of 2D, two-dimensional, flat. You're seeing all the ways of moving forward into a room in one clear way. It's like a map. So if there are many objects in the room, if there's a table or a sofa or a bed or whatever, you would be seeing all of them in varying kinds of perspective. And that is etheric vision. On the right hand side, it's like you're looking at the same room, but with astral vision, with clairvoyance, with astral clairvoyance, where you're seeing all the perspectives, all of it, all at the same time. So all the walls are completely clear. All the books, all the objects, the table, the chair, the contents of the table, and the drawers, the pens, the books, everything, all of it completely laid out flat. It's like a blueprint of multiple blueprints. All of it is super, 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 super detailed and cleared out. Why is this visualization important? So, sometimes when you're doing your spiritual practices or you're attending a motivational talk and the speaker says, you got to visualize your end result, you got to visualize your end life. Okay. Know where you want to be 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 10 years down the line. Okay. It comes with a lot of, energy. And they say, you must visualize all the details. So, how do you visualize all the details? You're looking at your life in a three-dimensional picture or in a four-dimensional picture, and you're visualizing that, okay, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do all of these meditations, I do all my purifications, then I go to the gym and I work out for an hour, I eat a very good breakfast, you visualize all the items of the breakfast, then you go to work or you go to your business and you work for 4 hours, and then in the business you get all these contracts and dealings and you earn millions of dollars or euro, whatever your currency is. And then you go back home, you go back to the club, you party, you swim, you dance, whatever. You come back home to your family, okay, your spouse, your children, your dogs, your pets, whatever. And then you go to sleep. And when you go to sleep, you're in the inner world, you're doing service and moving about, you're learning from your spiritual teacher. And the next morning comes again. So visualizing each and every one of those details in that much detail, that's where your clairvoyance really comes in handy. So if you want to use clairvoyance to improve your life, you need to be able to look at any aspect of your life and see it in complete and full detail. That, okay, if I am not prosperous, if I want prosperity in my life, okay, this is my prosperity. What's blocking me? All right, I am blocked in terms of laziness. I am very lazy, or I have procrastination, or I have confidence issues, or I'm not in the right place, or I've not got the right boss or the right colleagues. So these are all the issues. Then you start expanding and exploding them out. What can I do in order to not be lazy? I need to exercise. I need to be motivated. I need to make a to-do list. All right, that's how I work on my motivation. Or I keep procrastinating. Maintain a to-do list. Get an app on my phone that gives reminders. Tell someone, tell a friend or a colleague whom I trust that, okay, these are my plans. Please hold me accountable. So this colleague always comes in. So what I'm trying to say here is when you use clairvoyance, visualizing your life, visualizing the various aspects of your life, physically, financially, spiritually, relationally, socially, whatever aspect of your life, you visualize each and every detail. Everything floats up in front of you so you can see what's wrong. You can see what needs to be improved. You can see what you're doing well and what you can do more of. You can see what's not so well and you can do less of. So clairvoyance, the clear vision, will give you a very clear idea of how to improve your own life. And that, I think, is more useful than simply using clairvoyance to spy on what someone else is doing in the next room. Or if you've just broken up with someone and you want to know, oh, what is my ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend or ex-partners doing? Would you rather use clairvoyance to spy on people or to really improve each and every aspect of your life? So that is that as far as clairvoyance astrally is concerned. So here's an example of a Rubik's Cube. It's, the Rubik's Cube, you have these, kind of looks like this, the same object over here, 6 sides that you can move and match. So you can use clairvoyance to visualize your own future. Okay, anyone recognize who this person is on the screen? Yes, got the answer on DM. Robin Williams. That is it. So going ahead with simpler clairvoyance, as a person looks at another person, he will see him surrounded by the luminous mists of the astral aura, flashing with all sorts of brilliant colors and continuously changing in hue and brilliance with every variation of the person's thoughts and feelings. He will see this aura flooded with the beautiful rose color of pure affection, the rich blue of devotional feeling, or the hard, dull brown of selfishness, the deep scarlet of anger, the horrible red of sensuality, the gray of fear, the black clouds of hatred and malice, and any of the other hundreds and hundreds of indication which are so easy to be read from an eye with practice. And thus it will be impossible for any person to conceal from him the real state of their feelings on any subject. These varied indications of the aura are by themselves a subject of a study of very deep interest, but the author has no space to deal with them in details here. They have been spoken about in more detail and with colors and illustrations in the book Aura, the Aura, and a much larger book called Man, Visible and Invisible. That has a lot of colors and a lot of pictures. And so by studying them, when you're developed your clairvoyance, etheric or astral, and you're talking to a person and you're talking to them about something, a sensitive topic, and the person says, no, I don't really care about it, it's simple. But then clairvoyantly you see their aura becoming, a certain color. So okay, this person is being very diplomatic and polite by saying, no, I don't really care, but actually he is very, very passionate about the subject. Or you tell someone, hey, I think he likes you or she likes you, and the person says, nah, I'm not interested, but you see their aura suddenly becoming pink. So okay, they've got some sort of a crush or some sort of a connection going on. So clairvoyance also, by looking at the person's aura, nothing is hidden to you. So yes, as Lars said, you become a human lie detector or a human truth detector. Think of it in a more positive way. You become a truth detector because you can see the truth behind everything. The truth behind everything becomes very clearly visible to you. And this is also applicable not just for seeing a human being, but suppose you are doing the feng shui or the vastu of a place. You go to an office or you go to a home and you can see clairvoyantly the colors of the home. You can see the colors of the home. You can see the various colors which are floating about. So you say, okay, there's a lot of stress in this place, or there's a lot of happiness in this place. So you can do things which reduce the stress or which improve the happiness. So you can do multiple things that help the situation get better. Now, how many times has it happened to you, especially if you're those who are doing healing or counseling on a professional basis, and a person comes to you and says, yeah, everything's fine in my life. I just, there's a lot of problems in my relationship, and, I wish my family would treat me better. But then your clairvoyance is active and you look at the person and say, you've got a lot of anger in you, or you've got a lot of resentment in you. No, I don't have any anger. I don't have any resentment. You know what? This was just a waste of time. So then you know that this person has actually got a lot of stuff internalized that they need to get rid of. So maybe the family is okay. Maybe the family is not as bad as I think it is, but they kind of need healing on their own. So you say, hey, it's okay, come back, let's talk about it. Let's talk about other things. And then gradually you can see the truth detection becoming visible. So the problem is on all sides, but that's how human beings are. So when clairvoyance is there, you'll see the aura surrounded by beautiful colors, beautiful lights, all kinds of various colors. So this was discussed in the book, The Astral Plane, The Mental Plane, and also, of course, Thought Forms, these 3 books, which we've done the seminars for before, which is still there on YouTube. If you haven't got the links, it's available. Just ask us on the WhatsApp chat and we'll take it forward from there. So there it goes into a lot of detail on what each of those colors and those textures and patterns stand for. And when you see certain colors, textures, and patterns, you will be able to understand what's happening in their life and how you can help improve it. Because there's no point of having the information if you're not going to use the information to help them improve. So all of these subjects, all of these factors become visible with practiced clairvoyance. So here is just some image I found of the internet. The image on the left over here, that's just like a normal person. It just shows 7 colors and you've got all these things. And this one on the side is supposed to be a very spiritual person because the colors are more developed. It's bigger and brighter and stronger. Altius, Citius, Fortius, faster, higher, stronger. And it's more bright, more light coming in. So think of it this way. This is a person, an ordinary person going through their life, okay, nothing special happening. And then you tell the person, hey, you're going to get an increase in your salary. Your salary will be increased 200% and your taxation will not be increased at all. So the person becomes super happy. Boom. Great. All the auras and it changes. So it's very good for detecting how a person responds. So then you can say something like, oh, you know what, such and such person has bad news. The aura will shrink. So they go from this state back to the original state. So again, when you are using clairvoyance and you're aware, you have to be aware and study all the colors and their implications. Okay, guesswork is problematic. So if you know all the colors, the patterns, and the textures, because the same red, which represents anger, can also represent sensuality, can also represent affection. So just saying that, okay, there's a red in this person's aura means the person is angry. No, that doesn't always hold true. So knowing the various colors, the shades and the hues and the tints, all of that becomes really, really important. So instead of just having the knowledge of the aura and the shapes and colors, what is even more important, more interesting, is that will be the human denizens or the human citizens who are living in the astral world. So instead of just looking clairvoyantly at the people who are already physically around them, what's more interesting are the human inhabitants who live in the astral world. And they are divided into two main classes, the living and the dead. So those whom we call the living and those who are even more living. So you've got living as in physically living, and you've got living as in spiritually living, but physically dead. So among the first class, the physically living, he will find one or two people who are wide awake and fully conscious, who have been sent to bring some message or examining him to see what kind of progress he's making. So you're in the astral world and there's a living person who's looking at you to see, okay, how far have you come? While the majority of the people who are away from their physical bodies will be fast asleep, or they'll just be floating by. They'll be completely unconscious. So in the astral world, when we're sleeping, when our bodies are fast asleep, most of us are just floating about completely unaware. As we become more and more practiced, as we become more and more spiritually developed in the inner world, we start to become more and more aware, more and more awake. So the awakening in the inner world is what is also known as clairvoyance, because the vision of the inner world is clearer. So the consciousness never breaks. You're conscious, you fall asleep, and you're conscious in the inner world also. So in the inner world, you will find such living people who are partially conscious, fully conscious, or the majority are completely unconscious and they're wrapped up in their own lives. Okay, they're just wrapped up in their own lives. Now, here's an interesting test. This is from a slightly different perspective. Would you like to do a small test of your awareness and your clairvoyance in the physical world? Slightly off topic, but it's kind of connected to the observation part. So if 3 people say yes, we'll go ahead with it. So far, only 1 person, 2 persons have said yes. Okay, if in the next 3 seconds anyone says yes, we'll go ahead. If not, we're done. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so only 3 people have said yes. All right. 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you. All right. So for those of you who really want to, you are now aware of the color blue. Okay, you are now aware. Thank you. Yes, participation. Fantastic. You are now aware of the color blue. So I'm going to count from 5 to 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, slowly. You're going to look around the room and you're going to write down in the chat how many blue objects you saw. Okay, I'll count down from 10 to 1. You're going to look around the room, 360 degrees around you, and you're going to tell me how many blue objects you saw. Are you ready? Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Look around for blue objects. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so you saw 10 objects, you saw 7 objects, you saw 5 objects, you saw 8 objects. Okay, stop. Look only at the screen without moving your attention away from anything. How many green objects did you see? Don't look away. Don't look around. Just from your memory, in those 10 seconds, how many green objects did you see? Okay, look around. Take the time, look around. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now be honest with yourself. When your mind was focused on looking at the blue objects, did you remember how many green objects were there in your room? Did you pick it up? But when your awareness was directed again to look at the green, that's when you picked up the green and you looked at them again, right? So, where you've heard this saying, where attention goes, energy flows. So, your awareness can be expanded or it can be contracted based on what it's being guided to. So, you've already seen the blue, you've already seen the green, you've gone through your room twice without looking even once. How many red objects are there in your room? Go. So the point of this exercise is your awareness is in your control. When we are given a task, we become so focused and so centered on the task, we develop what is called tunnel vision. We see only that. But when our awareness is expanded, when we train our awareness to be expanded, that's when we can observe everything. So this is a very interesting story. My father told me this story many, many, many years ago, of this captain and his two lieutenants. So the captain was old, and the time had come for someone else to take command of the ship. So the captain said, "Okay, we're going to go to an island, and the person who passes the test will become the next captain." So he said, "Okay, there's a small ship." So when they landed to that island, there was a small mountain, and he sent these two boys, these two young men, and he said, "Okay, go to the top of the mountain. Tell me how much land there is. Tell me how much land there is, and come back." So they go. After some time, they're back. So he tells the first guy, "How much land is there?" He says, "Well, there's X amount of land." The second guy says, "Yeah, there's X amount of land." He says, "Okay, that's great. How many people are on the land?" The first guy says, "Oh, I didn't see any people. Wait, let me go and check." So he goes running away again and comes back and said, "Captain, there were 200 people." And the first guy says, "Well, I didn't count there 200 people, but I know there were about 100 something." Then the captain says, "Okay, fine. How many of them were women? How many of them were children? How many of them were men?" The second guy says, "Well, approximately 50 women, approximately 70 men, approximately 30 children." The first guy says, "Captain, I don't know. I need to go back and check." So he runs all the way and comes back again, and he gives a very accurate figure. The captain made the second guy the future captain. Why? Because when they're sent to do one job, they go and do the job, but they make their awareness of everything else around as well. So they may not have very specific information, but they can come back and they can give a clearer idea, which helps them to take a better decision. The first kind of guy, they only do exactly as they're told. They come back and they have to go again and again and again to get the same amount of information. Maybe they're more precise, but they take much more time. So the purpose of clairvoyance in this context is you must expand your consciousness, you must expand your awareness. Most people, as this paragraph says, they're only wrapped up in their own world. They can only see what is happening immediately around them. That immediately affects only their lives. They're unable to see the bigger picture. They're unable to see what's happening, the trends in the world around them. The same concept applies to awareness. So be still, be aware, and your clairvoyance will start developing. So that's the practical aspect of this exercise which you may use. You can go somewhere and you can train your mind to say, okay, today when I go out or tomorrow when I go out, I will see only purple colored cars, or I will only see blue colored bikes, or I'll only see women wearing yellow colored clothing. You can train your mind to pick up all these various kinds of things and your awareness will expand. So try that exercise for developing your consciousness and your vision. Interesting? Not interesting? Did we learn something from this about ourselves from this small exercise? Yes, the expansion of consciousness. Okay, carrying forward. Among the great host, the various numbers, the huge numbers of the recently dead, this person will find all degrees of consciousness and intelligence and all shades of character. Death, which seems to our limited vision so absolute a change, in reality alters nothing of the dead person himself. On the day after death, the person is exactly the same person as they were the day before, with the same habits, the same qualities, the same virtues, the same vices, the same problems. The only difference is that the physical body is no longer there. But the loss of that body doesn't change him anything, doesn't change anything, doesn't make him any different than he would if he just removed a coat. So, among the dead in the astral plane, the student, the clairvoyant, the practitioner will find people who are intelligent and stupid, kind hearted and sad, serious and frivolous, spiritually minded and sensually minded, just as they were among the living. So, physical death, the only change it makes is the physical body is no longer there. Otherwise, the habits, the patterns, the likes, the dislikes, the character building, all of it remains. So, as Master Chokuksui says, what can you take after your body dies? You can take your spiritual progress with you. So, it is in our best interests now, if we have to have a better life after death, to practice our own spiritual growth, to engage and indulge in our own character building, to expand our consciousness, to expand our knowledge, to be better people, becoming better souls. Paramahansa Yogananda, he had a very nice quote on this. I don't remember the exact words of the quote, but it's something really profound. He said that after death, men do not automatically become angels. If they did, let us all jump off the cliff and into the water right now. No, you become angelic or you become better with continuous effort and continuous practice. Death alters nothing except that the physical body is gone. This is important. Why? Because we live in very difficult times right now, 2020, 21. We don't know what the future has. So, death is something we're reading about in the news all the day, all the time, whether it's due to COVID or if it's due to war or if it's due to any other reason. In the inner world, we can be of service by blessing all those people who have recently left their bodies. We can send them love, we can send them healing, we can do healing for them in the inner world as well. So, the more love, the more devotion, the more service we do, the more we can help other people, not just physically, but energetically as well. So, in the inner world, as this paragraph says, since he can not only see the dead, but also speak with them, he can often be of much use to them and give them information and guidance, which is of tremendous value. Most of the people who have recently died, they're in a condition of great surprise and perplexity and confusion, and sometimes even acutely distressed, because for them the facts of the next world are so different from the legends and the myths and stories which are popular when they were alive. And therefore, this person who understands this new world and can explain matters is a friend in need. So, in the inner world, this is something which some very spiritually advanced people do. In the inner world, if someone has died, they go to the inner world and they help and they guide, say, okay, you know what? Just the physical body has ended. There's the light. Your job is to merge with the light. So go with the light. Here's the energy you need. Here are the qualities you need. Go. Don't be distracted. Don't worry about your family. Don't worry about your work. Don't worry about anything. Just go into the light. And then once you've gone into the light, we can discuss the next steps. So they really help out. So, in many, many ways, a man who fully possesses this faculty may be of use to the living as well as to the dead. They become a guide, a spiritual guide. So, in the inner world, as you develop your clairvoyance, you have the ability to become an invisible helper. So, when people are invoking, God help me, send me a person to help, you can be one of those people, one of those channels and instruments for actually helping to spread the light. Isn't that amazing? That physically awake, you're already doing great work. But even when you're asleep, or even when you are developing your spiritual practices in meditation, you can be of active help to people who are in so much pain and so much misery. So, in addition to astral entities, he will see astral corpses, shades, cells, shells in all stages of decay. But these are only just mentioned here because additional information was already given to them in the astral plane book. Another wonderful result which the full enjoyment of astral clairvoyance brings to a person is that he has no longer any breaks in consciousness. When he lies down at night, he leaves his physical body to the rest which it requires, while he goes about his business in the far more comfortable astral vehicle. Far more comfortable. In the morning, he returns to and re enters his physical body, but without any loss of consciousness or memory between the two states. And thus, he is able to live, as it were, a double life, which is yet one, and to be usefully employed during the whole of it, instead of losing one third of his existence in blank unconsciousness. So there are 24 hours in a day, 8 hours. We're supposed to be sleeping for 8 hours. 8 hours, that's one third of the day, just goes off in unconsciousness. So imagine being of use, being a good person, having a good life 24/7. Have you seen this movie called Doctor Strange? If you've not seen it, please see it. You'll find a lot of spiritual truths in it. Over there's a scene where Doctor Strange, he wants to learn stuff from this library. So he picks up the books, he takes out lots of big heavy books, and he takes it to his room. And you can see there's a scene where he is physically sleeping. His body is physically asleep, but his astral body comes out, and in the astral world, he is reading all those books. So even when his body is resting, in the inner world, he is picking up knowledge more and more and more and more and learning. So when he comes back in the morning to his physical body, he is much more knowledgeable, much more aware. If you haven't seen Doctor Strange, please see it. Some of the stuff is amazing. The spiritual sides, the astral plane, the mirror dimension, life, and the multiverse, absolutely amazing. Really interesting stuff. Okay, so you can think of consciousness like this. We are aware of only this part of our life, but actually there's so much more that we can be conscious about. So the question is, so the soul does not get tired. So you are the soul. So do you get tired if you send it to work studying every night? No, it doesn't. Because I am the soul. The soul is huge. Okay, the physical body is contained within the soul. Have you done Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul by Master Choa Kok Sui? Over there, a lot more explanation is given of the mechanisms and the structure. So in the inner world, because there is no physical vehicle, so I'm giving a simple version, because there's no physical body, there's no tiredness. Because there is no physical body, there is no physical tiredness, there's no fatigue, because there's nothing to fatigue. There's nothing to get tired. Okay, there's no question of any physical tiredness, no question of mental or emotional tiredness. It's just like being happy and in a very conscious state all the time. So think of the happiest that you've ever been, the lightest you've ever felt, and experiencing that all the time. That's kind of what it feels like to be operating in the astral world, in the mental world, and the higher worlds. So not only do you never get tired, but you become better and better. So when you come back, your physical body is supercharged up. Okay, you're plugged into the energy. So it's amazing. Yes. So I will send it to work. So I am the soul. So you are basically putting yourself to work. Okay. So no, you'll be fine. Just remember, invoke. That's super important. Invoke for divine help, divine guidance, divine protection. Invoke always for help, guidance, and protection from God, from your teacher, from your higher soul, and everything will be great. Now, another strange power which he may find himself in possession is that of magnifying at will the minutest physical or astral particle to any desired size, as though through a microscope, although no microscope can be made to be that big or that small. By its means, the molecule and atom becomes visible and living, and the realities become visible to the occult student, and on this closer examination, he finds them to be much, much more complex in their structure than science has yet realized them to be. It also enables them to follow with their closest attention and the most lively interest all kinds of electrical, magnetic, and other kinds of etheric action. And when some of these specialists of these branches of science are able to develop the power to see these things, some wonderful and beautiful revelations may be expected. So this person with clairvoyance, you can magnify something, or you can really zoom out of something at will. So you got a question over here. So this is different from the dream, because a dreamy night can be sleepless and tiring the next day. Yes, this is different from dreams. See, dreams are basically when your consciousness has gone to the energy world, and part of that consciousness, part of that memory has come back, and it has not been interpreted or processed properly through the brain. Okay, the brain is just an instrument. Okay, so what's happening in the inner world, you're experiencing them. You're experiencing these things in the inner world, these realities or these interactions, and your brain is only partially processing them. So when you come back with the memory of either a good dream or a bad dream or a nightmare. It has to do a lot with the amount of purification that you have, a lot to do with the intention that you have, and how you process it. So yes, it is kind of different from a dream, although practically speaking, it might just feel like you had a wonderful dream when your clairvoyance starts to get more and more activated. So that's what it's like. More of this information, this is all very technical information, which is given in another book by Leadbeater called Dreams. So this ability which we just spoke about, the ability to magnify or to zoom out, this is one of the siddhis or spiritual powers which are described in the Eastern books, Oriental books, as which come to the man who devotes himself to spiritual development. Although the name under which it is mentioned there might not be immediately recognizable. So if you've got a knowledge of Sanskrit, or if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, you'll find that they mention something called the eight major siddhis, and they talk about Laghima or Garima, something of that sort. So it's referred to the power of making oneself large or small at will. And the reason of a description which appears so oddly is that in reality, the method by which this feat is performed is precisely that is indicated in the ancient books. So to become super large doesn't mean that you physically become massive, or to become really, really small doesn't mean actually that you become tiny. No, what it means is with clairvoyance, they can expand their consciousness or they can contract their consciousness to see something zoomed out or super, super zoomed in. It's by the use of the temporary visual machinery of inconceivable fineness or minuteness that the world of the infinite little is so clearly seen. In the same way or the opposite way, it is temporarily enormous, increasing the size of the machinery, or it increased the width of one's view in the physical sense as far beyond anything that science has ever dreamt of possible for man. So in that alteration in size is basically, this is the paragraph that really matters, the alteration in size is really in the consciousness and not anything physical. The Oriental books has put this much more accurately. Right. So, sorry, the connection got lost in between, and this is a fresh recording. We are summarizing what we studied in the previous session, but in a more concise, more focused manner. So, anyway, this portion that we see over here, the visible light, is what is visible to us ordinarily as regular human beings, where we can see everything from the Vibgyor color spectrum, right? And the ones on this side, they represent the ultraviolet spectrum, where you have the ultraviolet rays, X-rays, and gamma rays, which are smaller and more refined. The wavelength is very, very, very short. And on the other side, you have the infra range, infrared, microwaves, radio waves, TV waves, and all, which have a much higher wavelength, so bigger. According to clairvoyance, what we discussed in the previous portion, in the previous slide, was that with clairvoyance, you're able to zoom in or zoom out. So you can zoom in to the extent that you can see bacteria, viruses, atoms, and even subatomic particles. And as you zoom out, you're able to see entire buildings, planets, star systems, galaxies, universes, multiverses, and so on. So it's an expansion and contraction of the entire site. You are able to see different colors and other imagery which is not normally visible. So we are limited by our physical eyes to only this little range, whereas a much vaster range, a much wider range is available when we exercise proper clairvoyance. So we've covered simple clairvoyance, which is full, and now we're going to go to partial clairvoyance. Now it would stand to reason that you know about, full clairvoyance first, because then you get an idea of what are the entire range, the entire gamut of possibilities available to us. And after that, when we go into partial clairvoyance, because that is something which we have more or less. So the experiences of the untrained clairvoyant will, however, fall very short of what has already been explained before. They'll fall short in many different ways, in degree, in variety, in permanence, and above all, in precision. So sometimes, for example, a man's clairvoyance will be permanent but very, very partial, extending perhaps only to one or two classes of the phenomena which is observable. They will find themselves isolated, endowed with some isolated fragment of higher vision. So, for example, they'll be able to see maybe one lower end of the spectrum without any idea of what else they're seeing. So their understanding will not be complete. Their interpretations will be very, very vague. So in 9 out of 10 cases, such partial clairvoyance will lack the precision. That is to say, there'll be a lot of vague impressions and inferences about it instead of the clear-cut definition and certainty of the trained man. Examples of this type are constantly to be found, especially amongst those who advertise themselves as test and business clairvoyants. So a word to the wise, someone who's truly clairvoyant will never go out and advertise themselves as being clairvoyant. It's only those who are partially clairvoyant or those who want to show off. They'll say, hey, test my clairvoyance. You know what? You can make a bet with me and check on clairvoyance this and clairvoyance that. So, mark of a true clairvoyant person is that they will never declare their clairvoyance to public for any reasons. Okay. Now, again, there are only those who are temporarily clairvoyant under certain very specific conditions. And among these various subdivisions, some are able to reproduce a state of clairvoyance at will or when they set up the same conditions again. With some other people, it comes sporadically, intermittently, without any observable reference to their surroundings. It just happens very randomly. And yet, with others, the powers only show themselves maybe once, twice, very few times, very rarely in the course of their whole lives. Now, what's important to us is the first part is for those whom the clairvoyance is visible, is available under certain special conditions. So let's go over there. Now, in the same class, we may put those who gain some temporary sight only under the influence of certain drugs or by the means of performance of certain ceremonies. Now, for those of you who've done pranic psychotherapy, you are already aware of what this section means when we talk about the critical filters, the protective web, the presence of elementals, and seeing certain things. So you can understand that those who are under the influence of certain drugs or abuse of certain drugs or drinks or whatever substances, they become clairvoyant, and it's usually not a pleasant form of it. That's the first part. The second part is those who become clairvoyant under certain rituals or ceremonies. So it says the ceremonialist sometimes hypnotizes himself with his repetitions, and in that condition becomes to a certain extent clairvoyant. More or less, most often than not, he simply reduces himself to a passive condition in which some other entity can obsess him, control him, and speak through him. Now, here's an interesting portion. Hypnotizes himself by his repetitions. So, if you've ever been part of a chanting group, probably not very spiritual, but more materialistic oriented, they're just chanting, 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 chanting. They go into a certain stupor, a certain kind of trance, and in that trance, they're able to see things, say things, because their conscious mind has kind of shut down and certain chakras have become activated. And this allows certain entities, higher vibration, lower vibration, whatever, certain entities to possess that person and use that person's body as a medium, as a channel or an instrument to speak. Now, sometimes these ceremonies are not intended to affect that person personally at all, but to invoke some astral entity which will give him the required information. But of course, that's a case of magic and not of clairvoyance. In order to know more about magic, in order to know about the astral entities and how to invoke them, that's more a part of the Kabbalistic studies, Secret of Magical Evocation. You have authors like Franz Barden and all who go into great detail about the Kabbalistic cycle and magic, what constitutes magic. So, anyhow, drugs and ceremonies both are methods which are emphatically to be avoided by anyone who wishes to approach clairvoyance from the higher side, higher clairvoyance, and those who want to use clairvoyance for their own progress for the purpose of helping others. So, if you want higher clairvoyance, it should be with a noble perspective in mind that you want to progress yourself spiritually and you want to help others, and not for selfish reasons like I'm just curious or I just want to, show off in parties. So examples of some of these ones were the Central African medicine man, witch doctors, shamans, and etc. Now, this is an image which should be extremely familiar to you from your basic pranic healing workshop. This is the aura on the left of a healthy person, and on the right of a person whose or outer aura is kind of broken, there are cracks and holes, the health rays are entangled and drooping, and you got all these thought forms, elementals, and other negative energies which are floating about. This is important. Why? Because those to whom a certain amount of clairvoyant power has come occasionally only and without any reference to their own wish, or those who have been highly hysterical or highly nervous persons, this faculty was to a large extent the symptoms of a disease. So I'm just going back to the previous slide. The person on the right with the dirty aura, with the broken, damaged aura, will become partially clairvoyant, but it'll not be in her control or his control. Why? Because that is a result of a disease. The protective filters, they are broken. They are no longer there. They're highly damaged. Therefore, the clairvoyance, seeing things, hearing things, sensing things, these are the tricks which are being played by the lower astral entities. It is not a sign of any spiritual development. It is not. A good way of determining this is to find out if a person is completely healthy, and if the person is very healthy and they're still getting clairvoyant suppositions and visions and all that, it can be argued that actually there's some problem, some disease underneath. And if a person is already kind of excitable or hysterical to begin with, and they're also having these visions, then the book says it's very evident that this is the faculties or symptoms of a disease. They need serious help. So the appearance shows that the physical vehicle is weakened to such a degree that it no longer presents any obstacles in the way of a certain amount of etheric or astral vision. An extreme example of this class is the kind of person who drinks into delirium and into the condition of absolute physical ruin and impure psychic excitation, which is brought about by the ravages of the disease. And so, this kind of person who's super drunk, who's doing a lot of substance abuse, who's just psychologically very damaged, and also physically very damaged, they're able to see for an amount of time some of the loathsome negative elementals and other entities which that person has attracted into his space because of his substance abuse. Now, however, there are other cases where the power of clairvoyance has appeared and disappeared without any influence on the state of physical health. But it stands to reason and seems probable that even in those cases, if they were observed closely enough, there would have been seen some alteration in the condition of the etheric double, which means such a person would, at that particular point in time when they gained their clairvoyance, that person would not have been in the healthiest of conditions. Right. So this is an example of, on the left-hand side, of course, not a very healthy aura, not a very happy aura, and the one on the right of a person who is significantly better off. And when you're on the left-hand side, the kind of clairvoyance that happens in these cases is the lower kind of clairvoyance. You're always seeing black magic or negative entities or demons and any other kind of negative stuff that the mind is susceptible to. On the right-hand side, as you improve your spiritual energy, as you do more meditation, as you purify, the aura becomes cleaner. So all the negative influences, the cracks, the holes, the webs, they kind of get healed, they get sealed up. So the clairvoyance becomes a lot more refined. So at that point of time, what you do see consciously, and it's in your control, that kind of clairvoyance is what you can actually call true, higher, proper clairvoyance. So in the case of another subdivision amongst the types of partial clairvoyance is the seeing of a ghost or an apparition of some friend or relative at the point of death. So then two possibilities are offered for our choice, and in each of them, the strong wish of the dying person is the impelling force. Before I go into this further, I'd like to share a personal example, a personal story. There are many versions of this experience. I'm just sharing one aspect of the experience. Many years ago, when my father was passing away or had passed away, just passed away, and we were in the hospital, and we were quite, as you can imagine, unhappy. We were very sad and grieving. I experienced, some of my family members and we collectively experienced seeing him, hearing him in his full healthy state. And he came and said, "I'm without pain. I'm free of any pain. It's absolutely fine. I'm going to a much lighter and higher world now. I'm being guided. So please be well, be in peace, stay well." And there were some other messages, personal messages, and then vanished. He vanished. So the family members who were there, we looked at each other wondering what just happened? What did we just see? What it meant was, back then we didn't understand it, but now after reading and understanding and experiencing, we understand that the strong wish of the dying person is the impelling force. There was so much love and affection and care that at that point in time, the soul, the departing soul, willed for itself a physical form. Not a physical body, a physical form, an appearance. And in that appearance, it communicated. Why am I talking about this? Well, because this is relevant to some of the study sessions we've done in the past. If you've been following us from the solar system onwards to the astral, mental, and the causal body books, the study sessions, you'll have read about certain extremely theoretical things such as the varying states of matter. The lower mental, lower astral, higher astral, 7 levels and sub-levels and so on. The importance of understanding this is that this kind of matter, astral, mental, and other kinds of matter, are available to us. They're constantly surrounding us. So when we are that refined, when we are, when I say refined, I mean we don't have the obstacle of a physical body. When we have that energy around us, we are able, to a certain extent, use those fine particles of matter and fashion for ourselves a new form, a new appearance, a new body. So it's what's called an apparition. It's an apparition because it's not real in the sense that you and I or other solid objects are real. So that's the importance of having the theoretical knowledge, because we use these matters to understand. When I say matter, I mean actual physical matter, energetic matter, to materialize, to see, and to travel in the inner worlds. So this force, which may have enabled him to materialize himself for a moment, in which case there was no clairvoyance needed. Or more probably, it may have acted hypnotically or mesmerically upon the recipient, upon the subject, and stimulated the higher sensitivities. In either case, this vision of seeing a dead person the ghost, so to speak, is the product of an emergency, and it is simply not repeated again because the necessary conditions are also not repeated. Now, a person who wishes to practice clairvoyance will be helped greatly in their efforts if they will adopt the order which we have just followed. That is, number one, take the trouble, and the author says this, take the trouble to familiarize himself as thoroughly as may be with the actual facts concerning the planes with which ordinary clairvoyance deals with. So, astral, etheric, physical, etheric, astral, mental, causal, and so forth. So, knowing the subdivisions and the kind of matter and materials which are available to us, how we can train ourselves. So, with the affirmations, with the invocations, with the practices, it'll help us develop clairvoyance. So, if we learn what is really to be seen with astral and etheric sight and what their respective limitations are, then they will have a standard by which we can measure the cases which we observe. Now, since all instances of partial sight must necessarily fit into some niche in this whole, if we have the outline of the entire scheme in our head, you'll find it easier comparatively with a little practice to classify the instances. So if you know the big picture, then you can know the details of what you're seeing. Now, we've said nothing as of yet to the still more wonderful possibilities of clairvoyance of the mental plane, and it's not really necessary that much should be said because it's very, very improbable that the student or the investigator will ever meet with any examples of it, except amongst pupils trained properly on some of the highest schools of occultism, like really, really, really high level stuff. So, mental plane clairvoyance, not applicable, not relevant for us. Because for them, it opens up another new world which is far vast than anything beneath it, a world in which all that we can imagine is of utmost glory and splendor. Splendor is very common. Glory is very common. Now, some amounts of its marvelous faculties available. It's written in the book, The Devachanic Plane. We can refer to those in future times for additional reference. Now, the type of clairvoyance such as this, which is still more fully to that which belongs to the plane next above it, the name of spiritual sight may reasonably be applied. And since the celestial world to which it opens our eyes lies here and now, all around us, it's not somewhere far, it's just all around us, and it fits our passing reference, should be made on the heading of simple clairvoyance, so that when we refer to it again when developing and talking about clairvoyance in space, it becomes relevant. But for now, we don't need to talk about it. It's fine. So these are the planes of nature, starting on the left-hand side, as you can see, the physical, which starts with solid, liquid, gas. We're all familiar with this. And then that's the visible physical. Then you have the invisible physical, which is the etheric double, the etheric and the super etheric. Then you've got the 7 levels of the astral body, the 4 heavier layers of the mental body, and the 3 lighter layers of the mental body again, but we call that the causal body. So the mental plane has the rupa plane and the arupa plane. The lower is called the mental, and the higher is called the causal. Then you have the buddhic and the nirvanic, paranirvanic, mahaparanirvanic, and so on and so forth. Actually, it's kind of over there, where you have the various manifestations of the ego or the higher soul. Okay, we've already covered this in the causal body book. And on the right hand side, it talks about involution and evolution. Involution is when it goes from higher levels down to lowest levels. So it starts from the mahaparanirvanic plane, goes all the way down to the physical plane at the mineral kingdom level. From there, it grows a little bit to the vegetable kingdom, then the animal kingdom, and from there to the human kingdom, and from the human it goes on to the spiritual kingdom. So if you direct your attention towards those 4 or 5 shapes at the bottom on the right hand side, you see the mineral kingdom, it's the grossest part for the first 4. And then for the spiritual kingdom, the mineral part is very tiny. So this kind of gives you an idea that those who are really, really spiritual, who are into spiritual practices and stuff, they work with minerals or crystals to a certain extent. For the most of them, the rest of their work is concentrated. You see, the thickest part is in the mental plane, in the buddhic plane, in the nirvanic plane. So as we attain oneness with the higher soul, achieving oneness with the higher soul, as we move towards the journey of becoming an arhat, this diamond shape, this kind of energy, this kind of focus is where our development mainly resides on. So when we have clairvoyance, we're able to see what we are inhabiting, where we're inhabiting, and all those we are inhabiting it with. This brings us to the close of the second and third chapters, simple and partial clairvoyance. The next chapters will be clairvoyance in space, clairvoyance in time, which we'll talk about in the next forthcoming session. With that, we conclude today's session. And let's give a vote of thanks to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chokok Sri, to Lord Mahaguruji Mailing, to all the great, great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher self, my divine nature, to the angels of love and wisdom, to the angels of theosophy. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to gather together as a group to understand, to learn, to develop our higher faculties, to become good instruments, proper instruments that we may use this knowledge and information to become a better person and better soul, and to help all those beings we share this planet with. Blessings be to all. With gratitude, with respect, and with love, we thank you. Thank you. Atma Namaste.